Welcome back to today's national weather forecast. There is once again a lot to talk about today. What you can see on the warnings map, what's going on right now, this severe weather and some of those flood threats and high wind warnings in the southeast. There was even a tornado warning early this morning, but it's good to see that that one is gone at this point. And then we also have some winter storm warnings and some high wind warnings in the west here. And what you can't see on this map is the possible Arctic blast of cold air we're going to be seeing towards the start of next week, some of the severe weather that's going to be pushing into the Midwest, and then the possible major snowstorm that could be pushing into the Northeast towards next week. We'll look at the exact timing if we have time at the end of the video. So lots to talk about today. So if you're only interested in one of these stories, you can go down into the comments where I put the little timestamps where you can just click on that and go directly to the story that you're interested in. So again, just taking another second to look at this warnings map. I think the big story right now is the severe weather going on down in the southeast, and that's actually going to continue, and it's forecasted to actually strengthen and get worse as we get throughout later this week. On Thursday, it looks to be a big day for severe weather, especially down in the same exact region in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas. There could even be some threat for hail, extreme winds, possibly even tornadoes. So that's one of the key things we're looking at today. Now, these storms that are hitting the southeast are also going to be moving up into the Midwest and causing some severe weather up there, and even some snow up in parts of Minnesota, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And then another big story, I think the second biggest story, is probably this winter storm warning going on down here in New Mexico. There's over a foot of snow expected in some places with that snow that's going to be drifting down there. That one's great to see because that's an area that's in extreme drought, so it's good to see that they're getting some precipitation. If we actually want to look at the precipitation, you can see it on this map where that's the low that's causing that severe weather in the southeast right now. That might even be the exact timing where that little tornado warning popped up early this morning. That is going to be working its way up into the Midwest throughout the day today, but you can see it's not that same severe weather that we saw down into the southeast. That's more just light to moderate rainfall with maybe some isolated periods where there's some thunderstorms up there, and then the chance for some snow up in Minnesota. But as that low is moving up there, you notice if you kept your eyes on Louisiana and Mississippi, they stay under this severe weather and this heavy rainfall all the way until Thursday when the next low pressure system comes in. And when that low pressure system comes in, that is going to be the one that we're watching this week the most closely. That one looks like it's going to strengthen, get rather... I don't usually like to use the word extreme, but this one is looking like it is going to be a strong storm with some wind gusts that we'll look at in a second, over 50 to 60 miles per hour, and you can see all that heavy rain and severe weather that's first expected to go through the southeast and then work its way up into the Midwest. We'll definitely be taking a look at Illinois right there because that's a period where the winds are going to be over 60 miles per hour and some of the rainfall rates will have the potential to cause some flash flooding. And then if you look at just the snowfall where you see the blue color on this map, you'll notice that snow working its way into New Mexico both today and throughout the day tomorrow, even strengthening tomorrow morning in parts of New Mexico as some locations there get over a foot. Then again, we've got that another system going through the northwest. It's almost like three storms doing the exact same thing where they bring some light snow to Washington, Oregon, Idaho, come down into the southeast, cause some severe weather, then go up into the Midwest, cause some more severe weather, and then even some snow. But this last one is actually going to be different. And this one is a ways off in the forecast, so I'm only going to talk about the final effects of this storm if we have time at the end of the video. But watch as this storm moves across the country. It's actually going to be doing something different than the first few storms. You notice the first storm here, or I guess that's technically the second now, goes up through the Midwest and it's just rain for the Northeast. Now this next one is going to do something a little bit different. It instead moves a little bit more horizontally across the country, and then it's going to hang out off the northeast coast. Now again, that's next Monday, so this is all very theoretical. It'll be very interesting to see if this actually ends up happening, but as of right now, looks like that low will be hanging out around the coast right there and dropping all the way down to 975 millibars, a major drop in pressure, and then appearing to cause what could be a major snowstorm for the northeast. So ways off in the forecast. That forecast itself will likely change. So if we have time, we will look at that and look at some of the totals that the northeast could be expecting, because some of the totals are looking rather large. So seeing all these storms another way, there's that first trough that's causing that severe weather down in Louisiana and Mississippi right now. That one's going to move up and go up into the Midwest. Then right behind that, we have this next trough digging down even deeper. Now the reason that's important is because when it digs this far south, it's actually going to start refueling some of its moisture from off of the coast of Mexico. It dropped a lot of that moisture in the form of snow over Washington, Oregon, Idaho. Right here, it's actually going to refuel, which will allow those heavy snowfall totals as it goes through New Mexico. And then eventually, it's going to work its way and actually start to strengthen as it moves over the southeast. I think this is the key weather story for the entire week, as this low right here moves through the southeast and then up into the Midwest, where you can see just how strong that system looks. And then if we want to see farther into the forecast, there's that last trough that goes through. Overall, there's a large ridge over much of the west that's going to lead to some warm and dry conditions, although we will have to stay tuned with this cutoff low, because these kind of weather patterns can have the effect of causing some interesting weather, maybe and hopefully some rain down here in Southern California. But the big thing that we're looking at is what that does as it moves off the northeast and becomes what looks to be a major nor'easter. Some of the locations as of right now are saying they could be getting 1.5 to maybe even 2 feet of snow with that storm. But again, that's a ways off in the forecast, so we're going to have to stay tuned with that for really the next week until that actually arrives. So just clicking through and looking at the precipitation we can expect throughout the rest of this week. The key bullseye I see here is down here in Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama, where there's some totals over 4 to 5, maybe even up to 6 inches of rain. Some of that severe weather is also going to be stretching up here in Illinois, though, where we also see more than 2 to 3 inches of rain in that location. One other area on this map that's going to be some heavy rainfall is over here in Washington and Oregon, where over an inch of rain is expected. Now the rest of that map was mostly snowfall, so we'll just click through what's expected to happen by the end of this week. You see the majority of the snowfall falling here in Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado. Some locations in here getting over 12 to 16 inches of snow, and the Cascades should be getting another foot as well. Now, what I know everyone's going to be interested about, especially if they're living in the Northeast, is what that system's going to do if it ends up actually hanging out on the coast off of Massachusetts. That's the snowfall totals that the forecast models are showing right now by March 31st. It says upper New England could be getting 16 to even, you see some orange, that's where you get into 2 to 3 feet of snow. So that's going to be one of the big stories we're going to be following for quite some time. And it also looks like Colorado looks like there's a area that could be getting 2 to 3 feet of snow as well. So another big story that's going on this week has to do with the winds that we're going to be seeing. There's some strong winds throughout California and then Arizona and New Mexico, both right now and then working throughout the day today into this evening and into even Wednesday as well. Some of those gusts are up to 40, 60 miles per hour here in California, and then also here in Arizona and New Mexico. Now, the only place we actually have the threat for some wildfire danger is down here in New Mexico and Arizona, where those strong winds are being combined with low humidities. In California, we are still relatively humid, so there's not as much of a wildfire threat as we see down here where the fuels are much drier. And then also with the extreme wind story, you can see one of those systems that goes through the Midwest on Thursday will have some winds 30 to 50 miles per hour, but the big storm is what happens as it strengthens through the southeast, where we see widespread areas of 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts associated with that one low we were looking at earlier, where you could really see it start to strengthen. Now you can see there's also some winds still over Southern California and Arizona that are more than 50 mile per hour gusts as well. But that is going to be the big story, because that's going to be associated with severe weather, some thunderstorms, hopefully not any tornadoes, but most likely extreme winds and some hail. And then that is going to work its way up into the Midwest and then eventually up into the Northeast, where places from Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, working all the way into the Mid-Atlantic and upper New England, getting those same 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts with that storm as it moves through. That, again, is the big one we're going to be talking about. Another story, though, has to do with that Arctic blast of cold air that looks to be actually coming in towards the start of next week. So it's a little confusing when looking at this map and trying to identify an Arctic blast of cold air, because there's almost always some area on the map where there's some cold air. For example, if we go to this Wednesday, you can see Nevada, Arizona, and then eventually New Mexico have 15 to 20 degree below average temperatures, while areas in the Midwest and Northeast are 20 to 25 degrees above average. Now this cold air, or this well below average air, I would say is more just because we have a couple low pressure systems moving in, and they're just going to be pulling some of that colder air from Colorado right over New Mexico, which isn't average. It's not what they're used to. So we get that 20 to 25 degree below average temperatures. Now, where you can start to see an Arctic blast is as we get to the start of next week. So as we click all the way through here, just kind of the same sort of mild patterns of cold air and warm air, and they're most likely just associated with some low pressure systems moving through and pulling cold air where it wasn't before. Now, where we start to actually see an Arctic blast of cold air looks to be about Monday morning into Monday afternoon, where you see this cold air start to work its way into Washington, Oregon, Idaho. If you missed the first click, I'll go back. Right there, that's what it looks like early Monday morning. And then towards Monday afternoon, you start to see this cold air push in, and then it's just going to continue to push in as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, into Thursday, all the way into Friday. You can see that same cold air has pushed all the way down into southern Texas. So just in case you missed that, I'll click through it again. There's, over the next week, just some random cold air, warm air all across the country. And then where we start to see that real Arctic blast come in is Monday morning, and then it just spreads out throughout the entire country. It almost looks like a wave moving across the country, where as we get into Wednesday and Thursday, there's areas of Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, even parts of Texas that are 20 to 25 degrees below average. And then you see that cold air actually is going to be stretching all the way down into Texas, where we have those 20 to 25 degree below average temperatures. Now, something I will say is this isn't looking nearly as bad as that last big Arctic blast of cold air we had, the one that was 40 to 50 degrees below average, where we had power outages in Texas, and it was basically so cold that water pipes were bursting. This one does not look nearly as bad as that one. That one was about 40 to 50 degrees below average, and it lasted for quite some time. This one looks like it's going to be not only less extreme, but also last not as long. It's going to be a faster mover, and then we actually start to get back to some more mild temperatures. So if we just want to look at the temperatures themselves, it looked like it came in next Wednesday. You can start to see some of that cold air pushing down, and obviously as we click through here, it's going to be pulling back and then coming back forward throughout the day and nighttime shift. But what you're going to want to pay attention to is where you see that blue color. That represents below freezing temperatures. And you can see as we get into Wednesday night into Thursday morning, almost the entire West, except for California and the southern part of Arizona, and even central parts of the country too, have that below freezing air, where you have that blue color there. That means you're going to be under 32 degrees, and that's indicative of that Arctic blast that should be starting to come in Monday morning, and then it looks like it'll be strengthening throughout next week. So that's something that we're certainly going to be following throughout the rest of this week to see the likelihood and the extremes that we're going to be seeing. But then we're also going to be following it all next week as it continues to develop. So just looking at the warnings map again, this is actually showing, I must not have reloaded this screen because it's actually still showing that tornado warning there that was popping up this morning. I'm actually kind of glad that it didn't reload, so you can see some of that severe weather that is already going on in this region. We had that little red color right there represents the tornado warning, but then you can see widespread areas with that flash flood warning, the high wind warnings, and then the winter storm warnings in New Mexico, high wind warnings in California. So clearly there's a lot to go over. So now that we're through the national overview, we can actually start to zero in on the most important regions. And I think the best place to start would be this severe weather down here in the southeast, because that is the top story that's going on right now and where the largest impacts are to be expected. If we want to actually see what this looks like in real time, this is showing some of the visible satellite image of all that moisture that's being pulled in. You can see those clouds developing. If you have really good eyes, you might even be able to make out some individual thunderstorms in there. But it's interesting just to see the overall rotation. You can see this spiral forming around this low pressure system that looks to be about above Oklahoma and Kansas in this image. And it's that counterclockwise rotation that's pulling all of that moisture up through the southeast, starting down here in the Gulf of Mexico. If we want to see the moisture itself, we can look at the water vapor map, where we should see the exact same story playing out. We've got that spiraling low pressure system up here in Kansas, which is pulling in that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. As it pulls in the moisture, that's where we get some of that warm, moist air moving in, which causes our thunderstorms, some of that severe weather, and occasionally tornadoes. And unfortunately, this actually isn't the big severe weather that we're going to be talking about in this region. So to see that, you can see that's the low pressure system. It's spiraling, bringing that moisture up, causing that severe weather throughout the southeast. Now, one thing you'll notice is a lot of that severe weather continues in this region until the next storm shows up as we get into Thursday morning. This one looks to be the bigger of the two storms. That's where we're getting rather extreme rainfall rates, the possibility of some flash flooding, and then as we'll see later, some extreme winds as well, with the possibility of some strong tornadoes. And that will be eventually moving up into the Midwest, and you can just see how strong that second system looks. If you want to see it another way, that's what's causing that severe weather right now, that little low pressure system right there. And you notice that the isobars, the lines of constant pressure, are moderately close together. The closer these lines look, the stronger the storm's going to be. So right there, it does look like there's some strong parts of the storm, which makes sense for why it's pulling in so much moisture. Now, when you compare it to the next storm, though, that's where that first one barely looks like anything. As the second one moves through, that's where you can see these lines get very close together, which means the winds are going to be even stronger, which means they'll be pulling in even more moisture. And you can see it actually looks like it strengthens as it goes up into the Midwest. So this is one of the best maps to look at. It's from the Storm Prediction Center, and they just give you the quick snapshot of your severe weather risk. This is what's going on today. We have that, I believe green is marginal. Let's check it out. Yeah, green is marginal. That's the marginal risk of severe weather both in Louisiana and Mississippi, where we're seeing those flash flood warnings and that severe weather right now, but then eventually some of that heavy rainfall moves up into Missouri and Iowa, parts of Illinois, where there's a marginal risk as well throughout the day today. Now, as we look at tomorrow, you see this actually start to strengthen a little bit as the first traces of that next system start to show up. We then change to that yellow color there, which represents a slight risk for severe weather going through Louisiana, Arkansas, and Mississippi, and then widespread areas that have that marginal risk of severe weather. Now, day 3, this would now be Thursday, is the key day that we're going to be watching throughout the rest of this week, because this looks like the big day for severe weather. This is where that storm we were looking at really starts to strengthen, those isobars start to tighten up, and that's where we get an enhanced risk of severe weather. That's where the Storm Prediction Center is saying there is an enhanced risk for severe thunderstorms, hail, extreme winds like 50 to 60 miles per hour, and then also the possibility of some strong tornadoes forming. So Thursday is certainly going to be the key day. We're looking at severe weather in the southeast. So with that being said, there is also some severe weather already going on right now and into this afternoon. That you can see that based on those thunderstorms you see bring those heavy rainfall rates throughout Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama throughout the day today. But then as we get into the day tomorrow, even though that storm is gone, you'll notice that we continue to get these heavy rainfall rates, and it stays over the exact same region. The reason that is a little bit alarming is because when you're getting all of this extreme rain and it's lasting all day today, all day Wednesday, that's going to continue to saturate your soils. That means there's so much rain that the soils can't absorb anymore, and that's what leads to flash flooding in many cases. Now, the reason that's also concerning is because that's before the big storm even shows up. The big storm appears to come in about Thursday afternoon, where you see it drop right down into Arkansas here, really start to strengthen and bring some what looks to be some very severe weather. Now, the good news there is the real bulk of that storm, where it's at its strongest, doesn't appear to be hanging out that long and should be gone by Friday morning. So just looking at the overall precipitation, one thing you'll notice is as I click through this map, it seems like every time I click, we're just adding on totals to the same area in Louisiana and Mississippi. That's where we have that key flood threat going on. So just watch right there. As I continue to click in, totals just continue to be added on until that storm is finally gone. So looking at some of those numbers, it looks like there's that area in eastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, that could be getting 5 to maybe even 7 inches of rain over the next 5 days. And then widespread regions of Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Alabama in that 1 to 3 inch range. So widespread heavy rain, but the key spot I'm looking at is right in eastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi, where there's the chance for 5 to 7 inches. The other big part of this story is the winds that are going to be coming in. You see, there are actually some strong winds throughout the day today with that severe weather we're experiencing right now. That shows some 30 to 45 mile per hour wind gusts, and then it looks to be calming down throughout the day Wednesday, but then as that next storm really starts to strengthen, that's where these winds really start to kick up again. That's where we're getting 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts Thursday afternoon in Louisiana and Mississippi. That's going to be spreading throughout the region, bringing those same 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts to Mississippi and Alabama as we get into Thursday night before they finally exit the region by Friday morning. So let's actually look at the local areas so that we can get the perfect timing for all these different stories that are going on. There's the severe weather that was happening this morning, caused that tornado warning to pop up. Luckily, that warning looks like it's gone by now, but some of that severe weather will be continuing, and some of that heavy rain will persist even throughout the day Wednesday, and especially in this region of eastern Louisiana and southern Mississippi, where you see there's just constantly heavy rainfall over that region. Now, where we start to see the real severe weather, I think it was right about right about there, I think, is the strong part of the storm. That's about 1 p.m. on Thursday. That's where that new low pressure system has officially moved in, and that's where we're expecting some of the heaviest rainfall rates and most likely the most severe weather, because can't really see it on this map, but that's going to be associated with some 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts, possibly some hail, hopefully not any tornadoes as well. So just clicking through there, looking at the rainfall totals. Again, majority of Louisiana is in that 1 to 2.5 inch range, but then the eastern parts of the state are where we can get up to 5 to maybe even 6 inches. So looking at Mississippi and Alabama, similar story. There is some severe weather and severe thunderstorms going on right now and throughout the day today, and then that's going to be turning into more moderate rainfall throughout the day Wednesday. But then about 1 a.m. on Thursday, we start to see some of that moisture being pulled in to that next storm, which is going to officially strengthen at 1 p.m. on Thursday. That looks to be the key time that we have to watch out for severe weather in Mississippi. About 1 p.m. on Thursday to about 7 p.m. on Thursday. That's where there's going to be a lot of warm, moist air moving into this region. So we'll have the concern. My major concern is for those tornadoes. So that's something I'll continue to be watching throughout the day today. So looking at the precipitation, again, southern Mississippi might actually be the key place in the southeast to look, because that's the area that could be getting 7 to 8 inches of rain. Although we also see this strip in northern Mississippi that could be getting 5 to 6 inches as well. Alabama, you're going to be getting some heavy rainfall as well, but not as much as Mississippi, but you do have these locations where you could be getting 4 to 5 inches, while widespread areas of the state are 1 to 2.5 inches. So something I want to point out here is what's going to be going on as this storm moves in on Thursday and starts to strengthen over the southeast. So we can zoom in here. You can see at this point it has dipped all the way down into Texas. The reason that's important is because you can see these winds flowing into the low, which means it's going to be grabbing a lot of warm air and moisture as it moves through that area. Eventually, it moves up here into Arkansas, and this is where you see these isobars start to get closer together. Now, this is showing the temperatures that are being pulled into this low pressure system. You can actually see the warm air. It's that red color right there, where you can see these winds pulling some of that warm air into this low pressure system. The other thing it's pulling in is that moisture. So there's the low. This is now showing humidity. For example, over here in New Mexico and Texas, we have a lot of dry air. Now, where that low pressure system is, you can see these winds just pulling that humidity and that moisture directly from the Gulf of Mexico right over eastern Louisiana and Mississippi. It makes sense that those are going to be the areas where we see the most severe weather, the heaviest rain, the possibility for flash flooding, and the severe thunderstorms. So that is, I think, the key map to look at there. All that moisture being pulled into this low pressure system. And if you want to actually see how strong the winds are, we can go look at the wind gusts, where you can see some of these winds are, I should be able to click on it, are about 55 to even 60 miles per hour. And that was just a random click. So there's most likely some areas in here that are even stronger winds than that. That's going to be, again, Thursday morning. We're still around 30 mile per hour wind gusts, because that low is just over Texas, and then it's going to quickly move over this region as we get into Thursday about 11 a.m. into Thursday afternoon. That's where the low has started to strengthen, and we get that widespread area of 50 to maybe even 60 mile per hour wind gusts through Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. So again, that is the key storm that I'm going to be looking at throughout the rest of this week. So afterwards, we can continue to follow both of these lows because they're actually both going to the exact same place. The first one, the one that's happening right now, first goes up and goes into Minnesota and Wisconsin. That one looks to just be bringing light to moderate rainfall to the area, but then we are going to see some snowfall filling into Minnesota and Wisconsin as that low moves through. The key one that we're going to be watching for the Midwest is this second one as well. That's the real strong one, where you can see it start to strengthen and then eventually move directly over Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and then right over Michigan. And you can just see how close these isobars are together. That is most likely going to be associated with some extreme winds that we'll be looking at in a second. So again, if you missed it, we'll just go back to the beginning right here. There's the first low that goes through the Midwest, and then the second one strengthens even more and then moves through the Midwest as well. So we're going to be looking at both those storms for this region. So that first one, again, to see it another way, there's that little low, goes through Minnesota and Wisconsin. This next one digs all the way down into Texas, gets some energy, and then moves right up through Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. And you can just see how strong that storm looks as it moves through the Midwest right there. So looking at the precipitation that we're going to be getting with those two lows, there's the first one coming in. Again, mostly widespread light to moderate rainfall, although we might have some select locations getting that heavier rain and maybe even some thunderstorms. Now on the back end of it, as it's able to pull down some cold air, that's where there's the possibility of some snowfall, although you can't really see it all that well on this map. But take my word for it, some snow working into northern Minnesota, and then you can see it working into Wisconsin as well. Overall, that one just looks like your average storm. This one looks quite abnormal. This is a very strong storm that, I know very strong isn't exactly a scientific way to put it, but that is what it looks like. You can see how close those isobars are together. You can see that huge strip of heavy rainfall over 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour, covering almost all of Illinois, eventually working its way through Indiana, and then eventually into Michigan. So that is going to be the key one to watch, because that, when you see a storm with isobars that tight, that tells you that there's going to be some extreme winds associated with it. So looking at the rainfall as we click through here, that is what we're expecting for the first storm. Just 0.1 to 0.4 inches throughout much of the Midwest, with some locations getting a half inch to an inch, especially here in Iowa. The second system that comes through, you can see, is clearly the bigger of the two. That's where rainfall totals in Illinois get up to 2.5 to maybe even 3 inches of rain, and then areas in Indiana and Michigan get over an inch of rain as well. So Illinois, definitely the spot to look out for when it comes to the flash flooding concern that I'm going to be looking out on the warnings map for as this storm gets closer in the forecast. So looking at the snowfall, that is what's expected with the first storm. Again, you can't really see it well on this map, so we'll focus better on the local regions when it comes to the snowfall in that area, but it looks to be about 2 to 4 inches. And then there's also some snow expected with that second system to drop again through Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, where the highest totals could be getting 6 inches, although widespread more likely to get 2 to 4 inches of snow. Now, this map right here might actually be the key one to look at for the Midwest, because the rainfall, 1 to 3 inches, that's certainly significant. Some 6 inches of snowfall, that's significant as well. But the winds that we're going to be seeing are, I think, the key part of this storm that are the most abnormal and have the possibility to have the largest impacts and damages. As you see, that first storm, actually no, let's go back to the first storm and actually look at the winds coming through. It looks like there are some areas that are getting 30 to 40 mile per hour winds, especially through Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan. But that's not going to be much when you see this next storm come through. That one appears to have some winds that are 50 to 60, maybe even getting up into hurricane force wind gusts throughout the day. Thursday, or it first comes in about Thursday night, and then it looks like it actually starts to strengthen through Friday morning, working all the way into Friday night before we finally calm down on Saturday. So that, I think, is the key graphic to remember for the Midwest. Those 50 to 65 mile per hour wind gusts that'll be coming through much of the Midwest throughout the day Friday. So looking at the precipitation, again, there's that light to moderate rain going through Illinois and Indiana throughout the day today with that first system. Then what we want to see is that second one. It looks to show up as some light rain around 7 a.m. on Thursday, and then that fills in across the region, and then it starts to really strengthen by about 7 p.m. on Thursday. By about 1 a.m. on Friday, that's where the low is directly over Illinois, and we're getting rainfall rates of 0.2 to 0.5 inches per hour. Before that finally moves out by 7 a.m. on Friday. So looking at the major part of the storm, starts to build up 1 p.m. Thursday. The key parts are 7 p.m. Thursday to 1 a.m. Friday, and then it's gone by 7 a.m. Friday. So the one blessing here for the fact that it is a very large storm is the fact that it's going to be a relatively quick mover. It's not just sitting over the region for 3 or 4 days like it looks to be doing over Louisiana and Mississippi with the combination of those two systems. So looking at the rainfall totals as we go in, there's with the first system, again, widespread, just 0.3 to 0.5 inches of rain with the first system. The second one's going to bring much more, getting up to 2.5 to 3 inches of rain in Illinois, 1 to 2 inches in parts of Indiana. This, I think, is the key map to look at. Again, there's those 35 mile per hour wind gusts that are associated with the first storm. And then here's what's going on with the second storm. Again, that's about 1 a.m. on Friday. We start to see those strong winds come in where we're getting 68 mile per hour wind gusts in St. Louis, 65 mile per hour in Indianapolis. Let's see what Chicago's doing, 47 miles per hour. So widespread areas of that 50 to 60 mile per hour winds, and that's going to be spreading out and actually strengthening in some places where we start to see it get even darker. I don't know what color you call this, gold colored, that where we start to see it get darker. That means it's going to be even stronger winds, widespread areas, over 60 mile per hour wind gusts throughout Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. So let's just look at the exact timing there. It looks like it first starts to creep into the screen about 7 p.m. Thursday. Again, the exact same time when we're getting the moderate rainfall starting to build up. And then 1 a.m. on Friday is when we start to see those really strong winds, possibly even hurricane force at times. 7 a.m. Friday, those strong winds continue, and then they're moving out and across the region throughout the day Friday. So Friday morning, I think, is the key time to look out for the severe weather throughout the Midwest. So let's also just take a look at some of that snowfall that's coming in, because that is another part of the story. Looks to first drop down into Minnesota about 7 a.m. on Wednesday, continuing into 1 p.m. on Wednesday and 7 p.m. on Wednesday as well. I think I might have said 7 p.m. the first time. So 7 a.m. Wednesday, snow shows up, continues until 7 p.m. Wednesday, and then it looks to be gone. Let's see if we get any snow with that second system. I think that's actually a different one. So it doesn't look like snow with that second system. But there might be another little chance of something on Saturday, which we'll look at the end of the video, because that's actually the one that could be creating a major snowstorm in the Northeast. But again, that's another story. So looking at the bullseye of snow that we could be getting, especially throughout Minnesota and Michigan, as we click through, we'll just click through both those systems all the way into the end of this week. There's that area in northeastern Minnesota that I think I might have actually just accidentally said Michigan. Man, need to pay attention. Okay, so northeastern Minnesota, that's where we have the possibility of 6 to 8 inches of snow, while there's a widespread region also stretching down into Wisconsin, where we're around maybe 1 to 2 inches of snow. So it's really that key spot right there when it comes to the snowfall. We're also expecting some snow to drop into Michigan, where at first it's just going to be rainfall because none of that cold air has been pulled down yet by the low pressure systems. Looks like that first system just bringing rain to the lower part of Michigan. The second system is going to be a different story because this is the stronger of the two, and it moves a little bit farther east, which means it's going to be pulling some of that cold air down into Michigan, especially as it exits the region. So it looks like there's a chance for some snow at about 2 p.m. on Friday, maybe even working into Friday evening as well. If we look at the totals for that snowfall as it falls in, looks like it similar story to Minnesota. We got that bullseye in the northeastern parts of the state that are 6 to 8 inches, while there's widespread areas that are 2 to 4 inches. So that's something that wasn't shown up on previous forecast maps, so it is interesting to see how that snow is coming in. So that basically covers the first 2 storms. The one going through the southeast right now, causing that flash flood and even the tornado watches and warnings down here in Louisiana and Mississippi. Eventually, there's going to be another system going in there that is going to be even stronger than the one that's causing these warnings right now. That second one is also going to be moving through the Midwest, where I think the largest impacts will be from those 55 to 65 mile per hour wind gusts that'll be associated with that storm. Now also on this map, you can see there are winter storm warnings above New Mexico here. So that might be the next most important thing to talk about, because as you can see, there are some minor to moderate, even major impacts expected with this storm in New Mexico. And while it's never good to see moderate impacts expected, that means that if we scroll over and actually look at the definition, it means often threatening to life and property. Obviously, that's never what you want. But again, New Mexico isn't an extreme drought, so there's kind of 2 sides of the coin, because as you can see, we are going to be bringing in some very useful precipitation when it comes to that drought. You can see that is not associated with the low that already moved through. It's actually the first traces of that second system moving through, bringing that heavy snowfall into New Mexico, especially throughout the day Wednesday. So if we want to see that another way, it's that low pressure system in this trough really digging down all the way down almost into Mexico, and then just sitting directly over New Mexico long enough to what looks to be some pretty large snowfall rates. So that's the key thing that we're looking at in New Mexico. Looking at the precipitation, looks like some of that snow actually starts as early as this afternoon into this evening. We start to get some of that snowfall, and then it strengthens throughout tonight into Wednesday morning, where some of the snowfall rates actually start to pick up, getting over 0.1 to 0.2 inches per hour, and then we get widespread snow throughout Wednesday morning. Now it looks to be easing up by about Wednesday evening and then gone by late Wednesday night. So the key part of that storm right there is 6 a.m. on Wednesday, and the hours around 6 a.m. where we're going to have that strongest snow. So again, obviously never good when you have moderate impacts expected where it's threatening to life or property, but this is an area that is in extreme drought. So it's on the other side of the coin, it's great to see some of this precipitation moving in. Looking at the total amount of snowfall, you can see this is, even though the map was saying moderate, we're going to call it this one a moderate snowstorm, because that is what the Winter Storm Severity Index is calling it. They're saying moderate impact, so we will just call this one a moderate snowstorm. Right here you see there are some locations that should be getting over a foot of snow, widespread areas of the state. Almost the entire upper half of the state is getting at least 1 to 3 inches, while there's also large areas that are getting that 6 to 8 inches of snow building in right there. So the key thing to think about here is, for that snow to fall in New Mexico, there has to be some cold air filling into the state, because this is an area that we've consistently been talking about for some wildfire danger. It's been rather warm, but there's a couple of reasons that cold air is filling in. One actually has to do with that low pressure system causing the severe weather in Louisiana right now. On the back side of that, you can see these winds are going from north to south. So that has some aspect of bringing some of that cold air down into New Mexico, really just pushing it from Colorado into New Mexico. The other aspect, and I think the more important part of this story, is the fact that that second low pressure system, the one that looks like it's digging all the way down into Mexico, that right in this map, this is about Tuesday night into Wednesday morning, you can see that down here in Texas now, where that's going to be filling in some of that cold air as well. That's going to be pulling, you just think winds flow into a low pressure. So if the low pressure is below New Mexico, it's going to be pulling cold air down from Colorado into New Mexico. And you can see that's exactly what happens right there, where you have that blue color. That means it's below freezing. And that's what's allowing all that precipitation we're getting to fall in the form of snow. So again, throughout New Mexico, moderate impacts expected, with a foot of snow expected in some areas. Now, one thing that I wasn't actually planning on talking about, but I'll just briefly mention, is that wildfire warning down here in Arizona and New Mexico. So just going back to this map, this might be the best place to show it. Down here in Arizona and New Mexico throughout this afternoon, you can see temperatures are actually relatively moderate in the 50s and 60s. However, there is a large amount of dry air over this region, especially getting into this afternoon. You can see how dry that air is over the region. If we click in here, that's humidities in the single digits, which, if there's dry air, it dries out the vegetation, makes it easier for a fire to start and spread. What might actually be the bigger part of the story, though, is the extreme winds that are associated with that low pressure system, getting some winds 52 miles per hour, and it's directly in that region where we have that red flag warning. So it's the low humidities, the dry fuels, and these wind gusts of about 50 to 60 miles per hour that are causing that wildfire threat in Arizona and New Mexico. So that's what that red flag is right there. Thought I would just briefly mention that because that is part of the story. Now, another part of the story is what's going on in the west. You can see there's numerous winter storm warnings and high wind warnings showing up throughout various areas in the west. Now we're going to really look at the northwest region, and then we'll jump back to the southwest region to see if California can get any rain as well. So looking at this, there's that first system, the one that's currently going through, dropping some light snow throughout much of the western United States. That's the one that's bringing that heavy snow to New Mexico. And then we have another one coming in Wednesday morning and Wednesday afternoon. We'll look at the exact timing when we look at the local maps. So that seems to almost be doing the exact same thing as the first system. And by that, I mean dropping widespread snow to Washington, Oregon, Montana, Idaho, Nevada, Utah, down even into Arizona and New Mexico, but almost missing California completely. So if we want to see the reason for that, you can watch these two troughs as they come in. That one right there looks to be just grazing the side of California. There's the chance that it jumps into Southern California a little bit, but as you'll see in the precipitation map, not much for California. But that whole trough is going throughout the rest of the West. Washington, Oregon, Nevada, all in that area where that low moves throughout the day today. And then you can see there's another one coming in Wednesday and Thursday, which looks to be doing the exact same thing. And by that, I mean the trough itself moving through Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Nevada, and then just scraping along the coast of California here, possibly getting down into SoCal. And then one interesting thing we're really going to have to look out for is if that actually ends up happening. It looks like the end of that system towards the start of next week could turn into a cutoff low pressure system. So that always has the potential to cause some interesting and random weather. But again, that's one of the things the weather models are not the best at forecasting. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens to that cutoff low, or even if there is a cutoff low. So looking at some of that snow throughout the west right now, again, that's what that first system, dropping that light snow throughout almost all the states you see here, except maybe California. So the next one looks to be coming in Wednesday morning, showing up as rain along the coast, and then that snowfall builds in through the Cascades, Idaho, Montana, and then eventually spreads out throughout the rest of the region. Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, getting some of that snowfall as well before that one goes down and becomes that major storm for the southeast. So looking at the total accumulated snowfall, we'll just click all the way through here, see what we're expected to get. Cascades looks like we could get another foot of snow in some places, and this is again on top of what we've already gotten with the last two systems that came through. So looks like a safe bet to say 6 to 10 inches of snow through the Cascades. Also areas in Idaho, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, Montana that could be getting those 6 to 8 inches, but widespread areas just in that 1 to 4 inch range. So clearly, Washington is the key spot to look at when it comes to the snowfall here. If we click through, looks like it's going to start again about 5 a.m. on Wednesday, strengthen at 11 a.m. on Wednesday, and then just continue throughout the rest of the day on Wednesday till it finally eases up and is gone by Thursday night. So looking at the totals with all that snow coming in, just a closer look at the Cascades in Washington. Again, there's that area right there that could be getting 12 to 16 inches of snow, while widespread areas of the Cascades and the Olympic Mountains in that 6 to 8 inch range. So I think the key thing that I'm interested in here is what's going to end up happening to the southwest, because that's, I think, the key spot to look at when it comes to these storms coming through the west, because one, the southwest much of it is in extreme drought. California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona are in extreme drought, even Colorado as well. So I'm saying that's the key thing I'm looking out for, because that's where I want to see some precipitation going in. So just looking at this again, that looks to be good news for much of the southwest as that low drops all the way down into Arizona and New Mexico. Great news for Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico when it comes to their precipitation. Now, on the other hand, if you look at California again, looks like we're just getting scraped by that low. Chance that it dips into SoCal, both that first one and the second one doing the exact same thing. So I'm hoping that we can get some precipitation in California, but overall, it looks like towards the end of this week and the start of next week, there's going to be a major ridge building over much of this region, which means it's going to most likely just be warm and dry. So let's actually look at some of that precipitation. Again, there are some areas of light rain and snow building into especially Southern California, where remember that low was able to kind of dip in right there and just scrape the eastern parts of the state. But for the most part, NorCal and the Bay Area not getting any of this. Now on the flip side, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, widespread areas getting that snowfall as that low moves through, and especially here in Arizona and New Mexico where we have the heaviest snowfall. Now as that next one goes through, it almost looks like I'm replaying the exact same map. We get that light snow in the very eastern parts of California and some light rain where that low is able to dip in at the bottom, and then widespread snow throughout Nevada, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. It's very interesting how similar both of these storms are looking. So if we just look at the snapshot of some of the rain we could be getting, mostly look at Southern California for this rain, because it looks like there are areas getting 0.1 to 0.3, maybe a half an inch of rain if you're lucky down here in Southern California, although you can see widespread areas of the state look to be remaining dry. Now if we look at the snowfall, that paints a pretty interesting picture for much of the southwest. That's looking like 2 to 4 inches widespread throughout Nevada. And then the key spots I think to see are here in northern Arizona, New Mexico, and southwestern Colorado, where there's some locations that could be getting over a foot of snow. Now, I wasn't actually planning on doing this, so this might take a second here, but just think about this map, how much of that snow is widespread over this entire region, and then we can actually look at the drought map here to see how it is almost the exact same area that is in that extreme drought. So that's why I'm very happy to see that snowfall coming in. And if you don't know, snow is actually better for drought than rainfall because it takes a lot longer to soak into the soils versus rainfall, which can just run off very, very rapidly. The snowfall can just slowly sink in and hopefully help with this extreme drought that we see throughout many of these states that luckily are going to be getting some great snowfall. Now, if we look at the wind gusts, that's another big part of the story because we did see that high wind warning going on in California, where you can see why. We have these gusts in Southern California and especially the Sierras and the Valley, working into the Bay Area a little bit, where we're getting 40 to 45, maybe even 55 mile per hour wind gusts, especially when you get up into the Sierras. So that's why we have that high wind warning throughout the day today, and it looks like it's going to be continuing into tomorrow morning as well, where much of the Sierras stays 50 to 60 mile per hour, stays in that region where there's 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. But again, also down here in Southern California, where we see those 30 to 40 mile per hour wind gusts. And then with that second system, the one where the low looked like it was bumping into Southern California, that's going to bring some extreme winds as well, where we get maybe even some gusts up to 50 and 60 miles per hour, going from the Central Valley down to the Southern California-Mexico border. And that's also going to be pushing into Arizona as well. So that's, I think, something we'll have to look out in future forecasts if that southern part of Arizona, which for the most part is remaining dry and has a lot of dry fuels, if that's going to lead to any fire danger. If I had to guess right now, I would say it most likely will. So that's another big part of the story, some of those extreme winds pushing in. So let's just look at some of the key precipitation spots. I think the key spot when it comes to snowfall throughout this region was in Arizona, where you can see we're already getting some of that great snowfall, or we're about to get some of that snowfall at about 12 p.m. today. And then that is actually going to strengthen as we get into 6 a.m. on Wednesday. And then that looks to be gone. And then the next storm builds in about 12 a.m. on Friday into 6 a.m. on Friday, and then continues all the way into what looks to be Saturday morning. We're still picking up some of that snowfall in Arizona. So just looking at the totals, we'll go all the way into Saturday morning to see how much we're getting with both of those systems. Looks like there are some areas getting over a foot, maybe even 1.5 feet in some locations, while widespread areas of especially the northeastern part of the state getting at least 1 to 4 inches with both of these storms combined. Now again, notice not a whole lot of precipitation down here in the southern part of the state, which is also where we're seeing the strongest winds. So that's going to be where we're most likely going to be talking about some wildfire danger in the future. So that was a lot to talk about today. That's everything that is most likely going to happen because it's in the forecast over the next 3 to 5 days. Now, since we do have a little bit of time, we'll have a little bonus forecast to look at something in the extended forecast that isn't exactly likely to happen yet. The models still don't have great confidence, but it looks like if it were to happen, it has the potential to be a major snowstorm. So let's just click through here, and we'll start by just going through the two different storms. There's that first one bringing the severe weather going up into the Midwest. The next one strengthens over the southeast, goes up into the Midwest. Now the next one behind that one, you can see, shows up in Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, just like those first two storms did, bringing some light rain and snow. And then eventually that moves across. Right here, you can see that low has now moved over parts of Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, that region right there. You start to see some of that rain collect around this low. But unlike the first two systems, this one doesn't appear to be digging all the way down into Texas and creating all that severe weather for Louisiana. This one looks to be almost taking a more straight path across the country and then going directly into the Northeast. Now this is where things could get interesting and will be one of the key things that we're looking at throughout the rest of this week. Again, this is Monday, March 29th. So a little farther out in the forecast than I typically like looking, but it's the end of the video, so that's why we're doing this. So right there, it looks to be hanging out off the northeast coast and dropping what looks to be a large amount of snowfall and actually strengthening and developing into what looks to be a major nor'easter, dropping down to 979 millibars. You can see how close those isobars look together. That means it's going to be a strong storm, or I shouldn't say going to be a strong storm because the confidence still isn't that great, but if this does end up happening, this map as of right now is showing that there's the potential for it to be a strong storm. So there's that first one, the second one that goes through the Midwest. This one moves across the country. Again, remember, it almost goes straight west to east instead of digging down all the way into the Gulf of Mexico like the first two did. You can see part of it breaks off, goes over California, while the other part just moves directly into Iowa and Illinois, and then eventually off of the coast of the Northeast. Now it's at this point where you start to see the storm really start to strengthen. Those isobars get a lot closer together. You can see it just tightens up, and you can think of the extreme winds that are going to be associated with that as that low is developing off the northeast coast. So just clicking through here, we can see until that happens with the first two storms, they're just bringing rainfall. So that shows what's going on. First storm that goes through the northeast, just some light rainfall. Second storm actually has the potential to bring some heavier rainfall, but again, it's not much when compared to the next one that could be following in behind it. Looks like it has the potential to first show up around maybe early Sunday morning, and then the key spot that we're interested in is when it jumps off the coast right here. So I'll show a graphic in a second for why that's the most important area, but once it jumps off the coast, it's basically pushing in moisture right here, pulling down cold air from the left side of the low, and that has the combination of dropping large amounts of snowfall through New York, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. And you can see that it's also not expected to be a quick mover. A lot of times with storms going through the northeast, we see it jump in and then it's gone. This one appears to be hanging out for quite some time, continuing to drop that snowfall, and it looks to what could be all the way into Tuesday. So if you love winter weather, don't get too excited when I show this map, because I guarantee it will change. If you hate winter weather, don't get too excited when I say that there isn't confidence in this model, because this could happen. That was confusing. What I'm trying to say is, as of right now, this model is saying that 1 to 2 feet of snow could be building into upper New England over the next week and a half, especially up here in northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, widespread areas where we saw all that heavy snowfall falling in, with the potential to get 1.5 to 2 feet of snow, even more than 2 feet in the very northern parts of Maine. Now again, the key thing to think about there is that's a ways off in the forecast. Snowfall isn't one of the best things that the forecasts are able to predict more than 3 days out, so that's something that we're just going to have to continue to watch. So just looking at the winds that come in with this as well, because that's going to be another big part of the story. So this looks to be coming in about, so first, actually, there is one with that second storm that comes through where we saw some of that heavier rainfall. There are going to be some extreme winds pushing through the northeast as well. That looks to be about Friday morning into Friday afternoon and Friday evening. Widespread areas of Pennsylvania and New York with just that second system look to be 50 to 65 mile per hour wind gusts, and then eventually that will be easing up. Now, where this big storm, the one that we're talking about right now with the potential to bring 2 feet of snow, you can see that starts to come in Sunday into Monday into Tuesday, and that's where it's really developed off the coast, getting into Monday night and Tuesday, where there's widespread areas of the Northeast where we're getting 45 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts. So I think the key thing that we're going to have to look at is, look at that. That's Tuesday at 0Z, where there's widespread regions where there's 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts. Let's look at the snowfall that's coming in at Tuesday at 0Z. Yeah, there's still widespread snowfall going into northern parts of New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. So that's where we're going to have to really look out for any blizzard warnings that might be popping up, because if you're mixing heavy snowfall and all that snowfall that had already fallen with these 50 to 60 mile per hour wind gusts, that's where all that snow starts getting kicked up. You limit visibility and you have the chance for getting a blizzard warning. So I just want to show this because it perfectly illustrates how this process is going to work if this does end up happening. So there's the low pressure system. I clicked all the way into Sunday so we could watch this storm itself as it moves off the coast. When it first moves in, much of the Northeast is in the high 30s to mid 40s, because you think on the right side of this low, you're pushing in that warm air from the Gulf Stream. You're pushing in warm air from southern locations. Now, as that low jumps off the coast, two things are going to be happening. One, now much of the northeast is on the left side of the low, so we're bringing down that cold air from Canada, which allows any precipitation that falls to be in the form of snow. But the other thing we're doing is pushing in all this moisture and humidity. So you can see, obviously, the air above the ocean has a lot of moisture in it. So as that low moves off the coast, we're going to be pushing all of that moisture directly into the northeast and especially up into upper New England at the same time that we're pulling down those below freezing temperatures. So this, I think, is going to be the key thing to watch to see if this ends up happening, because as of right now, it looks like it's shaping up to be what could be a major snowstorm. Let's actually just look at the exact timing of that. There's those first two systems, and the first two systems right there, I just want to fast forward because we are running out of time a little bit. We'll just go to 2 p.m. Sunday. That's when the snow of this possible big storm first starts to show up in Vermont, New Hampshire, even parts of northern New York as well. As we get into 8 p.m. Sunday, it gets a bit more widespread. And then as we get to 2 a.m. on Monday, that's where the storm has really started to strengthen, and we get some heavier snowfall rates throughout Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Then it continues to strengthen into 8 a.m. on Monday, where we get even some stronger snowfall rates, and then that continues all the way until about 2 p.m. on Tuesday. So this, I think the key thing to take away there is we're not only getting some heavy snowfall, we're getting heavy snowfall for a long period of time. So when that happens, it allows for the possibility to pick up a large amount of snowfall. If we actually end up getting a foot to possibly even 2 feet of snow, only time will tell. The forecast models will continue to get better every single day, so we'll continue to follow them as this storm and all the other big weather stories we're talking about become more likely and the forecast models get more confident. So hopefully this video was helpful, and I hope everybody has a great day, and thanks for watching.